It's funny. Usually when we talk about feeling stuck in life, I mean, really, truly stuck, we immediately default to the exact same metaphor, the locked door.
Right, the classic locked door, we all use it.
Yeah, you can picture it, right? You're just standing there in this hallway, furiously jiggling the handle. Maybe you're, I don't know, looking under the welcome mat for a hidden key.
Or if you're really frustrated, just throwing your shoulder against it.
Exactly. Throwing your shoulder against this heavy wood over and over again. And you're basically just hoping the frame breaks before your collarbone does.
It's brutal.
It really is. It's this very binary, almost aggressive way of looking at a problem. The door is closed, I am out here, and I desperately need to be in there.
And it is incredibly localized, too.
Mm.
Like, it's a hyper-focused, almost tunnel vision view of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we operate like that, we become entirely consumed by the physical barrier that's directly in front of us. We just obsess over the hinges, the lock, the wood.
Right. But then, you step back, you start looking at the world through this broader lens of systems thinking or life architecture, and suddenly you have this massive realization.
Which is that the door isn't the actual problem.
Yes. The door is just a piece of wood on a hinge. The real questions are so much bigger. Like, why is this specific room designed to keep that door shut?
Exactly. What is the structural integrity of the walls holding the frame?
Yeah, and perhaps most importantly, and this is the core of it, who is the person standing in front of it? And why do they genuinely believe they need to be in that room in the first place?
That realization right there, that is the absolute definition of a paradigm shift.
He really is.
We are moving away from fighting localized surface-level symptoms and moving toward actively redesigning the underlying environment and, the operator within it.
So, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We crafted this specifically for you, the learner, because we know you're here because you want to get past all that surface-level noise.
Right. You're tired of throwing your shoulder against the wood.
Exactly. You are tired of hitting the same locked doors in your career, in your relationships, in your own personal growth. You want to understand the actual hidden mechanics of your life and your choices. Well, you are in exactly the right place.
Today is actually a huge milestone in this architectural journey we've been on.
Oh, massive.
We are officially tackling part 2 of the Group 10 double feature.
Yes, we are.
Specifically, we're going to be dissecting the frameworks laid out in Chapter 3, which covers personalisms and environmentistics. And then we'll get into Chapter 4, which introduces the position of one and the identity handler.
It is a lot. The mission for today's deep dive is incredibly clear, but the terrain we are going to cover is vast. So let me just lay out the blueprint for how we're going to tackle this.
Good idea.
First, we are going to map the forces of your internal fuel, what the framework calls your personalisms. We're mapping that against your external architecture, which is the environmentistics.
Basically understanding the engine under the hood and the road you're driving on.
Exactly. Then we are going to climax by dissecting this massive fundamental upgrade in the human operating system. We're talking about the shift from the responsive one variable to the autonomous variable one.
The shift from R1V to AV1, that's a big one.
Huge. And finally, we are going to expose a deeply hidden piece of legacy software that is running in your brain right now. It's called the identity handler.
To really set the context for you, the learner, I want to emphasize that today's material is fundamentally about a profound transition in agency.
Agency is the perfect word for it.
We are looking at how to move from being passive users of a mental interface, just blindly clicking the icons that society or our parents put on our screens, to becoming the actual architects of the back-end code.
I love that.
We are going to look at the matrix of how you actually construct meaning, generate momentum, and stop sabotaging your own progress.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can understand why you are stuck at a threshold or why that metaphorical door won't budge, we really have to pop the hood.
Right. Look at the engine trying to push you through it.
Exactly. Because if the engine is flooded, or if there's literally no gas in the tank, it honestly doesn't matter if the door is open or closed. You aren't going anywhere.
You're just sitting there.
Yeah. So let's look at our internal fuel, which Chapter 3 terms as our personalisms.
Right. So personalisms is the functional term for your internal fuel system. This is the energetic network that either propels you forward with undeniable momentum or leaves you just spinning your tires in the mud.
Burning rubber, but going nowhere.
Exactly. And what's vital to understand here is that this isn't just some generic pool of motivation. The framework breaks this down into a highly specific sequence. It's a flow of energy.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The primary triad we need to examine is the movement from desire to drive to direction.
Right. Desire to drive to direction. Let's start with desire, because I feel like usually when I hear the word desire, I immediately think of a superficial wish. Like, I desire a cup of coffee. I desire a beach vacation in Mexico.
Sure, the consumer definition of the word.
Exactly. But we aren't talking about fleeting consumer wants here, are we?
Not at all. Desire, in this architectural context, is the raw, unfiltered want. It is that visceral pull you feel in your gut. And it happens before your conscious brain steps in to rationalize it.
Or justify.
Or, as we so often do, label it as impractical. It's a biological and psychological imperative.
So it's that quiet voice that says, I don't know, I want to build things with my hands. And it says that right before the really loud voice of your conditioning yells, but you have a law degree, you can't be a carpenter.
That is the exact friction point right there. And what's really fascinating here is how routinely and how violently we suppress our raw desires because they feel dangerous to us.
They threaten our established lives.
Exactly. Most people push their true desires way down because those desires simply do not fit the inherited narrative of what they, quote-unquote, should want.
Right. Society says you should desire upward mobility. You should desire a specific type of spouse, a certain zip code.
But desire is vital data. It is your system telling you what it is genuinely hungry for. Without connecting to that raw desire, you have no initial spark. You are basically trying to start a fire with wet wood.
But a spark isn't an engine. I mean, a spark just flashes and dies if it doesn't catch on anything.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They feel the desire, they buy a fancy notebook to sketch in, and then 3 days later, the notebook goes in a drawer and they never look at it again.
Which brings us to the second element of the triad, drive.
Okay. If I'm reading the mechanics of this right, drive is that raw desire actually being channeled into sustained momentum.
Yes. Drive is the engine block. It is the capacity for sustained effort. It is resilience when that initial excitement of the spark fades and things start going wrong.
So it's the difference between motivation and discipline, kind of.
Very much so. Motivation is waking up feeling great and going to the gym. Drive is waking up exhausted, feeling terrible, and going to the gym anyway. Because your raw desire for health has been structuralized into a mechanism of effort.
Okay, I like that. So you have the spark of desire, you build the engine of drive, but you still need to point the car somewhere.
Right.
Which brings us to the final piece of this primary triad, direction.
Direction is drive that has been aimed at a specific target. And it is so crucial here to recall the distinction the sources make between a target and a goal.
Oh, yes. Let's dig into that because I think people confuse these all the time.
They do. A goal is a destination. It's a fixed point on a map, like I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to become vice president of sales.
Right. It's a finish line.
But a target, on the other hand, is a compass heading. It's an orientation. It's saying, I am moving towards absolute physical vitality, or I am moving towards maximizing my leadership impact.
Got it.
So direction is the act of aligning your massive internal momentum with that compass heading day after day.
So to put this whole triad together, I was looking at the way these three elements interact in Chapter 3, and the mathematical reality of this triad is honestly a little brutal to look at if you've been living out of alignment.
It really exposes where the system is breaking down.
Exactly. Let's play this out for the learner. If I have desire, let's say I really deeply want to write a novel, but I have absolutely no drive. What does that actually look like?
Well, you are just daydreaming. You are sitting on the couch, maybe watching YouTube interviews with famous authors. You're visualizing your book cover.
But you haven't written a single word in 6 months.
Exactly. The spark is there, it's real, but there is no engine to capture the energy. It just dissipates.
Ouch. Okay, what about the opposite? What if I have incredible drive? Like, I am a machine. I wake up at 5 a.m., I work 80-hour weeks, but I have completely disconnected from my raw desire.
Then you are grinding. And grinding is a uniquely modern tragedy.
How so?
Because you're pouring massive amounts of life force into a void. You are working those 80-hour weeks for a promotion you don't even actually want. You're doing it just because the momentum of your drive needs somewhere to go.
And you haven't paused to ask your desire what it is actually hungry for.
Right. And that leads to profound burnout. Because the engine is running incredibly hot, but the fuel is entirely synthetic.
Wow. Okay, and then the third combination. What if you have the desire and you have the drive, but you completely lack direction?
You are caught in exhausting busyness. You are running 1,000,000 miles an hour, but you are running in a circle.
Like writing 3 pages of a novel, then deciding you want to start a podcast, so you buy a microphone.
But then you decide you want to learn to code.
Hmm.
Exactly. The engine is roaring, the spark is bright, but because there is no true compass heading, you generate a massive amount of heat and zero forward progress.
This triad, desire, drive, direction, it's the core of everything.
Yeah.
And the text mentions supporting triads as well, right? Things like value, willingness, and worth. Or purpose, scope, and service.
Yes, these are all interconnected living systems. They aren't just checkboxes on a worksheet. They have to be actively cultivated.
And if they are neglected, if the fuel system breaks down or gets contaminated by outside influences, that is when we enter a state that the framework calls drift.
Drift is perhaps the most dangerous state a human being can occupy, precisely because it rarely feels like an emergency at first.
It's not a car crash.
No, it isn't the sudden crash. It's a slow, imperceptible slide off the course. You barely notice it's happening.
Let's really dig into this because there are 2 specific types of drift outlined in Chapter 3 that I think are going to resonate deeply with the learner. Let's look at deceptive drift first.
Deceptive drift is insidious.
It really is, because from what I gather, deceptive drift happens when you actually seem to be doing everything right. You aim carefully, you apply consistent drive, and you hit the target perfectly. You win the prize. But it turns out it was the wrong target entirely.
Yes. To understand deceptive drift, we have to look at the power of inherited narratives.
Okay, give us an example.
Let's take a hypothetical scenario. Imagine a young woman whose family has struggled financially for generations. The unspoken, inherited narrative in her family is that money equals safety, and safety is the highest possible good. So her raw desire, at its very core, is simply for security. She just wants to feel safe.
Which makes total sense. That's a very fundamental human desire.
Absolutely. But society, and perhaps her family, offers a very specific, prepackaged target to satisfy that desire, they say. Become a corporate lawyer. Make partner.
Ah.
So she takes that on, she aligns her drive and her direction toward that goal. She works incredibly hard, she sacrifices her entire 20s, she makes partner, she hits the target perfectly, and she has immense wealth.
Yeah.
But she wakes up at 35, looks around her beautiful corner office, and feels entirely empty and incredibly anxious.
Man, she climbed the ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall.
Precisely. And why did this happen? Because she adopted someone else's definition of success. She conflated the means, which was wealth and prestige, with the end, which is that internal feeling of security.
So she pursued a surface desire that masked a deeper need she never actually interrogated.
That is deceptive drift. You succeed at the wrong game, and the victory literally feels like a defeat.
That is heavy. But then there's the other side of the coin, which is fragmented drift. And if deceptive drift is hitting the wrong target perfectly, fragmented drift feels like trying to hit 4 targets at once while blindfolded.
That's a great way to put it.
This is when your internal fuel is pulling in completely divergent directions, leading to absolute paralysis.
Fragmented drift is an internal civil war. It happens when you refuse to make the hard choices about what you genuinely value, so you try to honor competing, mutually exclusive desires simultaneously.
Give me an example of what that looks like in someone's daily life.
Let's say you have a profound, raw desire for deep creative mastery. You want to be a master woodworker.
Okay.
Now that requires long, uninterrupted blocks of solitary time. It requires a high tolerance for very slow progress. But you also have a heavily conditioned desire for immediate social status and high income.
Which demands you stay in your fast-paced, highly reactive tech sales job.
Right, you cannot honor both of those equally. The physics of time simply won't allow it.
You literally can't be in 2 places at once.
You cannot. But instead of choosing, you try to split the difference. You work the exhausting sales job all week, and you try to do the woodworking on Sunday afternoons when you are already completely drained.
So what happens?
The tech job suffers because you resent it, and the woodworking suffers because you can't give it the depth it requires. You are at war with yourself. You honor neither desire, you fragment your attention, and you just drift. You end up exhausted and mediocre at both.
Wow. Okay, so if I'm looking at all of this, the triads, the types of drift, it all culminates in this equation that models achievement in the text.
Yes, the achievement equation.
And I want to make sure we translate this clearly for the audio listener, because reading math on a deep dive audio format is usually a terrible idea.
It rarely translates well.
Right, but The core equation here basically states that your achievement is equal to your daily consistency multiplied by your alignment, meaning how well your daily actions are actually pointed at your true targets.
Correct. That's the numerator, the
Okay.
generated force.
And then all of that beautiful effort is divided by resistance.
Yes. The denominator is the friction pushing back against you.
So let me offer an analogy here to see if I have the mechanics of this right. If desire is the gas in the tank and drive is the engine and direction is the steering wheel, it feels like a lot of us are just sitting in the driveway, revving the engine in neutral.
And why do you think we do that?
Because we are confusing our goal, the final destination, like let's say Los Angeles, with our target, which is just the compass heading west.
Yes.
We refuse to put the car in drive until we have a GPS map charting every single turn, every traffic light, all the way to Los Angeles. We completely ignore the fact that our orientation, our daily behavior just requires us to point the steering wheel west, put the car in drive, and hit the gas.
Let's take that analogy a step further because it perfectly captures the trap of goal obsession that the framework warns about.
Okay.
When you demand a perfect map to the final goal before you begin, you are demanding certainty from an uncertain universe.
Which is impossible.
Exactly. The framework emphasizes that goals do not propel you forward. They are just static endpoints that await your arrival. Targets, compass headings are the actual directional force.
Right.
You are revving in neutral because you are waiting for the goal to pull you when you should be using your internal fuel, your drive, to push you along your target heading. If you just drive west, you will eventually discover the best route to Los Angeles dynamically. You'll adjust to roadblocks as you go.
So to you, the learner listening right now, I want you to mentally pull over for a second. Run an internal audit on your own triad today. Where is your engine stalling?
Are you daydreaming on the couch with a lot of desire but no drive?
Right. Or worse, do you have incredible drive? You are working yourself to the bone, but you are aiming at a target you don't even genuinely desire. Are you succeeding at the wrong game? Are you in deceptive drift?
It's a deeply confronting audit to run on yourself.
It really is.
But recognizing the state of your internal fuel is only the first half of the equation. Because as we move into the next phase of this architecture, we have to acknowledge a harsh reality. Having a perfectly tuned internal engine doesn't matter at all if you were trying to drive your Ferrari into a swamp.
Oh, that is such a good transition. Which perfectly brings us to the terrain. We have to look at the second half of this equation from Chapter 3.
The environment of physics.
Exactly. If personalisms are the internal engine, environmentistics are the external architecture. In that achievement equation we just talked about, this is the denominator. This is the resistance. You divide all of your aligned effort by the friction of your environment.
Environmentistics is literally the study of that friction. And the framework breaks it down into three distinct pillars: location, wraps, and winces.
Let's begin with location, because I think it is much broader than people initially assume.
It is. When we say location, we are not just talking about your physical geography. We're just talking about the city you live in or the square footage of your apartment.
Right, it's not just I live in Chicago versus I live on a rural farm.
Exactly. It encompasses your social location, the networks, relationships, and class structures you are embedded in. It is your economic location. What's your financial runway? Your debt-to-income ratio.
And crucially, it is your temporal location.
Yes. The specific season of life you are currently navigating. Are you in a season of building? A season of resting? Are you in a season of raising young children?
And what's fascinating is that every single one of those locations comes with what the architecture calls affordances and constraints.
This is a key concept.
Affordances are the behaviors that your location makes incredibly easy, and constraints are the behaviors it makes incredibly hard.
Let's ground that with an example. If your physical location is a tiny, incredibly noisy apartment with 3 roommates, deep, quiet, uninterrupted creative work is heavily constrained.
Right. It requires massive willpower to achieve. You have to put on noise-canceling headphones, face a wall, ignore the chaos.
Exactly. Conversely, if your social location is a vibrant, collaborative city filled with people in your industry, serendipitous networking is highly afforded. It happens almost automatically just by going to a coffee shop.
Or temporal location. Let's say you are a new parent of twins. Your temporal location heavily constrains your ability to travel spontaneously. You can't just hop on a plane to Paris.
Obviously not.
But it affords you a massive forced crash course in efficiency and prioritization. You have to audit what your location is actually allowing you to do.
Which brings us to the second pillar of environmentistics: wraps. If location is the ground you stand on, wraps are the layers wrapped tightly around your daily existence.
Okay.
They are the people, the institutions, the bureaucratic norms, and the cultural expectations that envelop you. And wraps can be categorized broadly into two types, protective and constrictive.
Protective wraps seem pretty straightforward. These are the things that keep the engine safe, right? Like a great mentor who shields you from office politics so you can actually focus on the work. Or a healthy community that holds space for your growth. Strict boundaries around your deep work time.
Exactly. But constrictive wraps are where the friction really multiplies, and they're often very subtle.
How so?
While a toxic workplace is an obvious constrictive wrap, everyone knows that's bad. But a more insidious one might be a bureaucratic company culture that verbally claims to value innovation.
Oh, I've seen this.
They have posters on the wall about taking risks, but structurally, they reward rigid compliance and punish any creative risk that fails. That wrap suffocates drive completely.
Or even a well-meaning family dynamic. Let's say
Yeah.
you come from a family that highly values safety, like the lawyer in our earlier example. Every time you bring up wanting to start your own business, they don't explicitly forbid it, but they constantly ask, are you sure that's sustainable? What about your health insurance? What if the economy crashes?
They are wrapping you in their own anxiety.
Exactly. They're amplifying your fear every single time you try to move forward. It's a constrictive wrap woven out of love, which makes it incredibly hard to cut off.
That is a perfect example of how friction is generated passively,
Yeah.
which leads us to the third and perhaps the most visceral pillar of environmentistics, winces.
Winces. This is such a fascinating concept.
A wince is not a thought. It is a biological response.
Mm.
It is a bodily, visceral no signal. It occurs when something in your external environment is fundamentally, structurally misaligned with who you are becoming or with your internal target.
Oh man, the Sunday night dread. That is the universal classic wince.
Everyone knows that feeling.
It's 7:00 p.m. on Sunday, and your stomach literally drops. You feel nauseous. That isn't just you disliking your commute. That is your body recognizing that the environment you are about to enter on Monday morning is toxic to your system.
And the framework provides another profound example of a wince. Imagine tightening your jaw or feeling a hollow sensation in your chest when someone compliments you.
Wait, why would you wince at a compliment?
Let's say they compliment you for being so responsible or being such a team player.
Okay.
Deep down, your body knows that your so-called responsibility in that moment was actually just you abandoning your own boundaries to please others. You took on extra work you didn't have time for because you couldn't say no.
Oh, wow.
You were being praised for self-abandonment. The room is clapping for you, but your body winces because it knows you just betrayed yourself.
That is incredibly clarifying. But I have to push back here, because this brings up a massive friction point with how we are generally taught to live.
What do you mean?
Well, society basically defines being a responsible, mature adult as the ability to constantly, stoically override your own winces. We are told to just suck it up, push through the pain, pay the bills, deal with the annoying boss, do the hard thing. How do we differentiate between a wince that is genuinely signaling a toxic, misaligned environment and just the normal, everyday discomfort of doing hard, necessary work?
That is such an important distinction. You're hitting on the core mechanism of burnout right there. It is a trap so many ambitious people fall into. The distinction the architecture makes is vital. We must separate the discomfort of effort from the visceral rejection of misalignment.
Okay, break that down for me. What is the discomfort of effort?
The discomfort of effort is waking up at 5:00 a.m. to train for a marathon when it's cold outside. It is the mental strain of struggling to learn a new coding language. It is the sweaty palms before having a difficult but deeply honest conversation with your partner.
Right. It's hard, but it's productive.
Yes. That discomfort is constructive. It builds capacity. The friction is pushing you toward your target. The soreness in your muscles means you are getting stronger.
It sucks in the moment, but afterward you feel expanded, you feel proud.
Exactly. A wince, however, is a signal of destruction. It is the body reacting to a betrayal of the self.
Give me a contrast to the sweaty palms example.
Okay. Sitting in a board meeting while your boss publicly humiliates a junior staff member, and you force yourself to stay silent and nod along because you need the year-end bonus. The knot in your stomach in that exact moment is a wince. It does not build capacity. It erodes your integrity.
That is such a clear line.
Overriding the discomfort of effort makes you a stronger version of yourself. Overriding a true wince repeatedly destroys your identity and inevitably leads to systemic collapse.
That distinction is absolutely everything. Effort builds capacity. Misalignment destroys the self. So, learner, I want you to do another audit right now. Think back over the last 7 days. I want you to identify one wince you felt this week. Just one.
It shouldn't be hard to find.
No, it shouldn't. Did your stomach drop when a specific calendar invite popped up on your screen? Did you clench your teeth during a conversation with a family member? Did you feel a hollow feeling when someone thanked you for doing something you deeply resented doing? What is that physical discomfort trying to tell you about the wraps in your life?
And the goal here isn't just awareness,
Yeah.
right? It's action. It is about becoming an active environmental designer. Once you identify the wince, you must redesign the architecture of the room.
You have to reduce the friction.
You have to install new constraints so that your desired behavior becomes the path of least resistance, and the undesired, self-abandoning behavior becomes hard.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. Let's say our learner does all of this. They tune their fuel. They audit their triads. They connect with the raw desire. They build the engine of drive. They set a compass heading. The engine is roaring.
Okay.
And then they audit their environment. They drain the swamp. They cut off the constrictive wraps. They change their location to afford deep work. They stop overriding their winces.
They have completely optimized the equation.
Right. They have maximum force and minimum friction. But what if they still can't walk through the door? What if they are standing there, the engine is revving perfectly, there is a clear paved road ahead of them, the door is unlocked, and they are utterly paralyzed. They cannot take the step. Why?
Because at this threshold, the problem is no longer the quality of the fuel, and it is no longer the terrain of the environment. The problem is the fundamental identity of the operator trying to drive the car.
And this brings us to the absolute climax of this deep dive. We are entering Chapter 4 and a concept that the framework calls the position of one.
This is the core mechanic of human freedom.
It really is.
When we talk about the position of one and the mathematical notation of this life architecture, we have to clarify right away that it is not a number in a sequence. It's not 1, 2, 3.
Right.
It represents the unity operator. It signifies the focal agency in any given system.
Okay, let's ground that unity operator language. I like to think of it like a solar system. Whatever holds the position of one is the sun.
Yes.
It is the center of gravity. It is the stable, unmoving mass. And everything else in the system is a planet that must orbit around it, constantly adjusting to its gravitational pull.
That is a highly accurate visualization. It tells us who or what is the stable center that everything else organizes around. And Chapter 4 outlines a massive paradigm shift between two modes of operating within this solar system. Let's start with the default mode for almost all of humanity.
Okay.
It is called R1V, the responsive one variable.
The responsive one variable. If I'm understanding the dynamics of this, in the R1V configuration, you are not the sun. The external world is the sun.
Exactly.
The environment, your boss's mood, your spouse's expectations, the market, the culture. That is the solid, unmoving, constant, holding the position of one. And you are the variable, you are the V.
Yes. In R1V, you are perpetually reacting. You shapeshift. You adapt to survive the gravity of whatever is in the center. You act as a weather vane.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. If you walk into a room and the room is tense, you immediately shrink and become quiet to accommodate the tension. If the room demands a joker, you become the joker. You spin to match the wind, desperately seeking approval and avoiding conflict at all costs.
It is such an exhausting way to live because you have no internal battery. You have no internal anchor. You are entirely reliant on the external grid.
Correct.
If the room is happy with you, if your boss praises you, you feel great. You have value. But if the room is angry or if someone misinterprets you, your entire sense of self collapses because the sun you are orbiting just went dark.
Let's look at how this manifests in a daily scenario. Consider a middle manager trapped in R1V mode.
Okay, let's build this out.
They have a meeting with their aggressive superior. The superior says, "We need to push the team harder, work them through the weekend." The R1V manager, wanting to appease the powerful constant in the room, says, "Absolutely, I'll make it happen."
Right, they adapt to the boss's gravity.
Then the manager goes to their team, who are already burnt out and angry. The team pushes back. The manager, now needing to appease this new constant, the angry team, says, "I know it's totally unfair. I fought against it, but management is crazy."
Oh, wow. They are literally just a mirror reflecting whatever is in front of them.
Precisely. They have no center. They are structurally compromised. And the profound upgrade, the massive shift that this entire architecture builds toward, is moving out of that state and into AV1.
The autonomous variable one.
Yes.
In AV1, we completely invert the solar system. You become the sun. You become the constant. You are anchored in your internal principles, your targets, your deepest truths. And the environment, the people, the market, the chaos becomes the variable that you navigate through.
To understand how this works mechanically, the sources use a specific notation layer involving fractions, the slash. If we write x1, it means I use x.
Okay.
The one, which is you, the core agency, is in the denominator. You are the foundation. You are the delineator, the governing context. You are wielding the variable as a tool.
Let's give an example of that. If I write empathy 1, what does that actually mean in practice?
Empathy 1 means I am actively using my empathy as a tool to understand this situation. You are anchored. You feel the other person's pain. You understand their perspective, but you do not lose yourself in it. You are wielding empathy strategically to connect and guide.
But if we flip the fraction to 1x, the 1 is now in the numerator. It means x shapes me. I am no longer the foundation. I am yielding to the system beneath me.
Yes.
So 1 empathy means I am letting empathy completely wash over me and dictate my actions.
Exactly. In 1 empathy, you absorb the other person's pain so completely that you lose your own boundaries. If they are anxious, you become anxious. You cannot help them because you have yielded your agency to their emotional state. You have slipped right back into R1V.
So the goal is to just stay in X1 all the time, right?
Yeah.
To always be the foundation, always wielding the tools, always in control.
Now, this is where the framework introduces a brilliant nuance, the inversion kick.
Oh, okay.
You cannot operate in X1 total control mode, iterating constantly, being the unwavering sun forever. It takes immense energetic output to hold that center. If you try to stay there permanently, you will burn out. And worse, you will become rigid and incapable of learning. You must be able to alternate.
Wait, alternate, like go back to being the variable.
You must strategically shift into 1x, surrender mode. But you don't surrender to chaos or to toxic people. You surrender to a trusted principle, a proven routine or master teacher.
Oh, I see.
You let the system guide you so you can recover and learn. Think of a martial artist. In a fight, they must be strategy 1. They're wielding the strategy, adapting, controlling the space. But in training, with their master, they must shift to 1 form. They yield to the ancient forms, letting the discipline shape them, trusting the process without trying to control it.
That makes so much sense. AV1 mastery is not about always being in control, just white-knuckling your life.
Yeah.
It is about the conscious, strategic alternation between wielding a tool and yielding to a principle.
Exactly. You are choosing when to be the delineator and when to be shaped.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and where I have to throw a flag on the play and push back a little bit.
Go for it.
If I flip my entire life to AV1 and I become the constant that everything else orbits around, doesn't that risk making me incredibly narcissistic? Like, I am the sun, my truth is the only truth, and the rest of the world, my spouse, my team, they all must bend to my gravity.
It is a vital distinction to make, and it is the shadow side of autonomy. The sources address this directly by exploring the fatal flaw of supremacy. AV1 is not about dominating reality or forcing other people to submit to your will.
Because that's just tyranny, right?
Yes. When you try to force the complex, messy world to bend strictly to your will, refusing to see the humanity or the independent reality of the variables around you, as the text illustrates with historical examples of dictatorial control and failed empires, you are actually rejecting reality.
You're just fighting what is.
You are waging a war against the fabric of existence, which is fundamentally interconnected, and that war always, mathematically, leads to collapse. A dictator thinks they are an AV1, but they are actually just terrified of the variables and trying to freeze them in place.
Right, because true strategy requires engaging intelligently with what is, not what you demand it to be. You can't navigate a storm by screaming at the rain to stop.
Precisely. In true AV1, it isn't your ego that holds the center. It is your principles. You still engage dynamically with the field, with the reality around you. You still compromise. You still collaborate. You still listen deeply. But you do it from a stable core of values. You aren't fragmenting your identity to please the room. You are bringing a whole integrated self into the room to interact with it safely.
So, learner, think about your career right now or your most important relationship. Think about your dynamic with your boss or your partner. Are you running an R1V program?
It's a tough question to ask.
Yeah. Are you constantly adjusting your mood, your opinions, your boundaries to match what you think the other person expects? Are you the weather vane spinning every time they sigh or send a terse email?
And if you realize that you are, the transition to AV1 requires confronting the exact mechanism that keeps you trapped in that reactive state. because you don't stay in R1V just because you're weak. You stay there because a system in your brain is actively fighting to keep you there.
Which perfectly brings us to the final and perhaps most revelatory segment of our dig dive. What is actually keeping us trapped? Why, when we see the door is open, do we refuse to walk through it and become the sun?
It's a deeply embedded piece of legacy software.
It's time to expose the identity handler.
The identity handler is a profound architectural concept of the mind. Its primary job, its prime directive, is to protect your continuity. It wants to keep your identity coherent and recognizable to you, even if that identity is causing you immense suffering.
It prefers miserable certainty over joyful ambiguity.
Always.
It's the ultimate gatekeeper, and its favorite phrase, its ultimate defense mechanism is, "That's not me."
Oh, yes.
You see an opportunity to lead a project you are perfectly qualified for, and a voice in your head immediately says, "I can't do that. I'm just the support guy. I'm not a leader. That's not me."
The identity handler anchors the normal. It dictates what doors are allowed to be walked through based purely on your past behavior.
Let's run a scenario on this.
Okay, let's say you have spent 20 years being the dependable one who never rocks the boat, the peacemaker. Your identity handler has built a massive fortress around that definition.
Right.
If you suddenly decide to set a firm boundary with a toxic family member, the identity handler will view that action as an existential threat to your survival. It will flood your system with anxiety, guilt, and panic.
We'll slam the door shut.
Yes. Not because you lack the communication skills to set the boundary, but because setting a boundary contradicts the legacy script of the peacemaker.
It literally makes you feel like you're dying just for trying to change your mind. So how do you beat it? You can't just fight it because fighting yourself is exhausting.
To bypass the handler, the framework introduces the linguistic and psychological concept of nounships. We naturally trap ourselves in rigid nouns. We say, "I'm a failure, I'm an anxious person, I'm a peacemaker."
We cement them into facts.
Exactly. We take temporary states or historical behaviors and forge them into permanent identity structures.
So what are nounships?
Nounships shift this framing
Right.
from rigid permanence to temporary modes of occupancy. It is a subtle shift in language that creates massive structural freedom. Instead of saying, "I am an anxious person," which the handler will defend to the death, you reframe it as, "I am currently experiencing anxiety mode in this specific context."
Oh, wow.
Instead of, "I am a failure," it becomes, "I am occupying failure mode regarding this specific project."
It creates psychological space. You are separating the essence of who you are from the transient condition you are experiencing. You are turning a life sentence into a temporary hotel room.
And this leads directly to the core structure of identity management, the event atom. This is the structural breakdown of how we engage with the world dynamically without losing our AV1 center.
The event atom.
Yes, it is a triad: person, persona, and principle.
Okay, let's break that down because Chapter 4 uses some visual markers here. Let's translate them for audio. The person, which the framework visualizes as a white circle, is the witnessing self. It is your core, naked identity. It is the part of you that observes your life without judgment. It doesn't have a job title or a relationship status. It just is.
The persona, on the other hand, visualized as the black circle, is the strategic role being played in any given moment. It is the mode you are occupying.
So like wearing different hats.
Exactly. You must adopt different personas to interact with reality effectively. You might adopt the authoritative leader persona at work, switch to the playful, supportive parent persona at home, and then occupy the disciplined athlete persona in the gym.
Personas are necessary. They are the suits we wear to do the work. But the danger is forgetting you are wearing a suit.
Which happens all the time.
And that brings us to the third element, the principle, represented in the architecture as a gear. The principle is the stabilizing axis. It is the deeper why that connects the core person to the active persona.
This is the crucial mechanism. Without the principle, the gear, the white circle of the person collapses entirely into the black circle of the persona.
You forget who you actually are.
Yes. You forget that you are playing a role,
Mm-hmm.
and you start believing that the role is the entirety of your existence. You become the R1V weather vane again, entirely defined by the persona the room demanded of you.
Give me an example of that collapse.
If you are a CEO and you lose the principle of service that anchors you, you collapse into the CEO persona. When you retire, or if your company fails, your entire identity is destroyed because the persona was destroyed. The principle, your core values, your AV1 anchor, prevents that fatal collapse.
I have an analogy for this that I absolutely love because the sources actually use the metaphor of a gaming console when discussing identity.
I love this one.
Think about it like this. It's like I've been playing this massive open world 100-hour role-playing game, and I am still using the starter character class from level 1 because I genuinely thought I wasn't allowed to change it.
Right.
I've been playing as the support class for 40 years. If I have the support class title equipped, I literally cannot access the leader skills or the boundary setter skills. The game's code, the identity handler won't let me. Nounships and personas are just me realizing, wait a minute, I can open the menu and unequip a cursed item. I can swap my class to leader mode for this specific boss fight at work, and then swap back to support mode when my friend needs to vent over coffee. I am the player, the person. I am not the avatar, the persona.
That is an exceptional translation of the mechanics. The handler creates doors that seem impossible to open because opening them would contradict your legacy character class.
Right.
You don't beat the handler by throwing your shoulder against the door. You beat it by executing what the text calls XO, which stands for X operators plus gyro narrative.
Right. This is the formula for lived transformation. Let's break down XO. The X operators are the structural actions you take to transform the room's architecture. It's the physical doing.
Tangible steps.
Exactly. It's changing your location, removing a constrictive wrap, physically saying the words, "No, I will not work this weekend."
But the X operators alone are not enough because the handler will fight them. You must pair them with the zero narrative. The zero narrative is the new identity story you tell yourself at the exact moment you take the action.
How does that sound in your head?
It is replacing I am a bad person for saying no with I am becoming the kind of person who has the capacity to hold multiple modes at once, and right now, I am occupying boundary setting mode.
Ah, that is powerful.
When you combine the structural change of the X operator with the identity shift of the zero narrative, you get XO. You rewrite the back-end code.
So to you, the learner, we have to ask the ultimate question. What is the "that's not me" sentence you are telling yourself right now to avoid crossing a necessary threshold in your life?
What is the script?
What is the legacy script your identity handler is running to keep you safe but stuck? And how does that impossible locked door change if you view that script not as the permanent core person you are, but simply as an outdated persona you can unequip and take off?
It changes everything. It moved the obstacle from an immovable wall to a manageable variable.
Okay, we have covered an incredible amount of ground today, and we've dug deep into the bedrock of this architecture. Let's pull back and recap this journey. We started by popping the hood and auditing our internal fuel, our personalisms. We mapped the flow from raw desire into the engine of drive and pointed it with the compass heading of direction.
Ensuring we aren't caught in the empty victories of deceptive drift or the paralysis of fragmented drift.
Exactly. From there, we surveyed the friction of our external terrain, our environmentistics. We learned to read the affordances and constraints of our locations to intentionally cut away constrictive wraps.
And most importantly, to honor our visceral winces as biological signals of misalignment, not just discomfort to be ignored.
Then, we took all of that and inverted our entire operating system. We moved away from the exhausting reactive R1V weather vane where the world dictates our shape and stepped into the AV1 position, becoming the gravity source where our internal principles hold the center and the world becomes the variable we navigate.
And finally, we hacked the legacy software of the identity handler. We traded rigid, permanent nouns for fluid, adaptable nounships, utilizing the persona principle triad to ensure we wield our roles as tools rather than collapsing into them and losing ourselves.
We have fundamentally outlined the mechanics of moving from being passive users of our lives to conscious architects, and finally, to active, empowered participants.
It's a massive upgrade.
It really is.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up, there is one final provocative thought that I want us to leave the learner with. It's something that ripples beneath the surface of Chapter 4, pointing toward the mathematics of collective transformation.
Yes, we've established that if you achieve AV1, you become a stabilizing gravity source in your network. You become the sun. But consider the inevitable complication.
What happens when two suns meet?
Exactly. What happens when two AV1 individuals meet in a deep relationship or on a high-level leadership team? If neither person is willing to be the reactive R1V weather vane, if neither will simply collapse their boundaries and adapt to please the other, who holds the position of one? Who is the sun when there are two suns?
Oh, wow. Because if they both just stubbornly hold their ground, that's not a relationship. That's a Cold War. That's a recipe for an absolute standstill.
Exactly. Two suns colliding creates destruction, not harmony. The answer to this paradox requires what the architecture calls a third. When two autonomous, principle-centered individuals meet, they must identify a shared principle, a mutual mission, or a core value that both of them willingly choose to orbit.
They build a new solar system together.
In a truly integrated, powerful relationship, neither person dominates the other. Neither demands the other become a variable. Instead, both willingly serve the third.
That is beautiful. It changes the entire paradigm of partnership. So we leave you, the learner, to ponder this as you go about your week. What is the third holding the center of your closest relationships?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
In your marriage and your business partnerships, are you serving a shared, elevated principle? Or is one of you just dominating the space, forcing the other to stay trapped, playing the variable?
It is the ultimate test of autonomy, having the strength to hold your center and the wisdom to know what is worthy of orbiting together.
Learner, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you take these frameworks, audit your internal dashboard, drain the swamp of your environment, and consciously step into your position of one today. Stop jiggling the handle on the locked door. Step back, look at the architecture of the room, unequip that starter character class, and realize you've had the admin password all along. Until next time.